Hey you, this is Jasim from CodeBan, and in this video I'm gonna be showing you how to construct a one-to-many relationship or a many-to-one relationship in Django. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe my channel and click the bell icon near to it. So without any further, let's jump right into it. Alright guys, so in order to understand the concept of one-to-many relationship and many-to-one relationship, I have drawn a couple of things here. So in my whiteboard, I have drawn two tables. Now this is a department model and this is an employee model. Now there exists a relationship between these two models. So we'll show you that. So starting with the department table, now a department can have multiple employees, right? So a department can have n number of employees. For example, an HR department can have 50 employees or 100 employees. So that's kind of the first thing to note. A department can have multiple employees. So if we try to draw the relationship itself, so let me say it as something like this one. So a department, which means one department, can have multiple employees, right? So m employees, so a kind of one-to-many relationship. Now there is also another thing to note, that is an employee. If we take any employee, that employee should be associated with exactly one department. So which means I can only work, for example, I can only work in HR department itself, not in multiple departments. So an employee can be associated with exactly one department. So that's a kind of other thing to note. So two things. The first one, a department can have multiple employees, and the second one, an employee can be associated with at most or one and only department. So that's a kind of one-to-many concept. Now if we look into the many-to-one concept, it's just the reverse of this one. So if we start thinking from this side, that is from the employee side to the department side, then it's sort of a many-to-one relationship. So for example, this one can also be said as many employees can be associated with or can be worked in a department, right? So many employees, which means kind of m there. So m, many employees can be associated with or can be worked in a department, which means one department. So that's a kind of many-to-one relationship, just the reverse perspective, just a perspective itself. So many employees can be worked in a department, so many-to-one. So I hope you got the concept of one-to-many and many-to-one relationship. Now in Django, you don't have a separation between these two, which means the method used is exactly the same. So you don't have to remember two code bases for these two kind of things. It's just a reverse perspective. One-to-many is a kind of the many-to-one is a kind of reverse perspective of one-to-many. So that's it. Let's jump into the code itself. So what I have here is a fresh new Django project. So I have created a company application. So since we are using the department and kind of employee table here, I have constructed a company application. So you can just start that, and I have added that in the settings.py installed app section. Now we'll start constructing the tables, the models itself. So in the models.py, we'll start with a class, a department. So we'll start with department, which extends from models.model. Now the only field I'm interested in here is the name field, which means the name of the department, such as HR or accounts or similar. So I'll put this as a char field with a max length of 50. And that's it. You can, of course, in real cases, there are pretty other fields like location and all. You can, of course, do that. But the important thing is the relationship between the department and the employee. So I'll also provide the string representation here. So I'll just return the self.name itself there. So the next thing is the class employee. So which also again extends from models.model. Now the employee, I shall provide some fields like the name field, so models dot again char field with a max length of let me say 124. Then an age is equal to models dot let me say that's integer field there. And the next thing, this is enough about the bio of the employee. Now the important thing is kind of relationship. So whenever we create the employee table, or in real case, if we hire an employee, to which department which he belongs to, that's the question. If we create an employee, which department he is in, which department, that's the question here. So there we should construct a field, and the name is up to you, department, which represent actually the department here. So you can of course provide this as department ID or something. Now at the end, this field will hold the ID itself, so we don't have to actually care about making those IDs and all. We'll just stick with the Django will do the rest of the things. So this field is nothing but which department is the employee belongs to. So this is a kind of foreign key field. So there is a field called foreign key, which means the relationship, that is the relationship to which model to relate to, that is the foreign key. So the first argument, to which model, so we have the department model there, and the second argument is a kind of on delete, which means not actually the second argument, there is a keyword argument known as on delete now, which means if we delete the related model, that is if we delete the department model, then all of the associated employees, right? So if you delete an HR department, then the employees in the HR department should be fired or not. That's the question, whether those employees should leave or should destroy, or they should exist there. So that's the question. So if we delete a particular department, then there are a couple of options, whether you want to delete all of the respective employees in that department, or this models dot cascade means if we delete a department, then all associated employees should be deleted as well. So there is another option which means do nothing, which is nothing but if we delete a department, then the employees shall not be deleted, they should stay there. So that's kind of two things there. So I'll stick with cascade there. You can of course do any of them as well. So with that being said, our relationship or table structure is over. I'll just do the string representation self.name. That's it. Now we have formulated the kind of relationship by between these two models by using a foreign key, and that's it, guys. Now the next thing we are moving into is the code base itself, how we interact with these two models. So I'll use the shell there. So before that, I'll make the migrations and migrate. So make migrations. And the next thing is python manage.py migrate. So with that being said, everything is in the database. Now we'll start exploring the things. So I'll make use of the shell for instance. So you can of course do that in the views.py where you write the logic. That's totally fine, but we'll make use of the shell itself. So first thing first, we'll import the models there. So from company.models, import the department and the company, the employee model. So we'll import that, and the next thing, first I'll create some departments and some employees. So I'll say something like HR is equal to, this is an HR department, so department.objects dot create, then we'll say the name as HR. So that's the first one. Now the second one is kind of accounts. So I'll say counts. Now I'll change the name as well. So counts. Now the third one is maybe purchase. So I'll say purchase. And in here, I'll also say purchase. So that's it. Now if we just query the things like a department dot objects dot all, we can of course get those three departments there. Now similar way, I'll create the employees as well. So I'll say employee dot objects dot create, and the name I'll provide it as something like John Doe. and the age maybe I'll stick with 35. So, and the third one is the department itself. Now the department at the end, what it is in the field is the ID of that particular department. But when we create or when we access this one, this department field, we should actually provide the instance of the department object. So whichever instance, not just pure ID, just like 7 or 6 or 1. You cannot do that. That will cause an error. But you have to provide the instance. So the instance is nothing but this one, what we have created here. So this is an instance of the department object, so which holds the HR department, accounts department. We have created separate instances there, so we can actually provide HR there just like that. So this John Doe goes to HR department, and we'll create one for accounts, and the name I'll provide this as Jane Doe, and we'll also provide one for the purchase department. So I'll say purchase, and the name I'll stick with Simpson. So that's it. Now we have 3 employees, right? So if we just query that employee.objects.all, we get that 3 employees there. So that's perfect. Now the next thing we are going to do is explore, okay, which means we'll just mix those 2 models. We will define how that relationship works. So the first one I'll stick with is employee.objects.all. So the first one is the kind of example I'm doing is I want to get the department of Simpson, for example. I want to get the department name of Simpson. So we know that he's in the purchase department. So I want to get that using the query, the ORM query builder. So employee.objects.all. So how I would achieve is not all actually. So I'll get the first thing I'll get that employee. So his name is Simpson. So we got that employee object there. Now we want to fetch his department, right? So the employee dot objects dot get Simpson, and dot, you can just access the department there. Since we have that department field here, that is a department instance. You can of course do a dot name, which means you can access this name. Now if there was something like location, you can access location. That's totally perfect. Now here we are interested in the name, so we got that purchase there. So that's perfect. So you can of course do a dot syntax dot department, which will give you that department instance. Dot name will give you that name of the department. Dot location will give you the location if that exists there. So that's totally perfect. Now this is the first one, that is accessing a department from employee, accessing the department table from employee model. Now the next thing is a kind of reverse thing, which means we are accessing the employee table from the department table. So the kind of example is suppose I want to fetch all the employees in the let me say in the accounts department. So in the accounts department we have the Jane Doe there. So in the accounts department we have 1 employee. So we want to fetch that employee. So the idea is fetching all the employees in the accounts department. So how will you do that? So there are a couple of options, like we can actually do something like the employee.objects.get. So you can of course do not actually get, you can of course use filter. So we can filter things like the department is equal to the kind of account. So if I say like that, it gives me that Jane Doe, right? So that's perfect. That's totally perfect. So the other way, the cleaner way of doing it is by using the reverse relationship. That is, from the department model itself, we'll access that employee model. So I'll say department dot objects dot get. We'll first fetch that department. We have the department name, right? So we'll say what should say, we want the accounts, right? So accounts. So we fetch that particular department. Now we want to get the employees of that department. So we'll just say dot, and there is something called a reverse query or reverse model manager, which means something like this one, employee set, and you can access the all method there on the reverse model manager. Now I'll explain what this one is. This is a kind of a reverse model manager, which means this is a kind of default one that is provided by the Django. Now you can of course override this employee set. Now employee set is much like objects of the employee, and you can of course access like all, then filter, you can filter, you can do whatever the queries there, much like we did with the normal one. That's possible. So you get the same result, right? So what if I want to override this one? I want to say something like dot employees dot all. So the department accounts dot employees dot all. So how do I achieve that? So that's the question there. Now that's totally straightforward. In the foreign key, you can access an argument, a keyword argument, related name, and you can of course do that employees there. Now you can of course do this way, but this will give you that error. Now that's because we want to restart the shell. So I'll get rid of this current shell. I'll just exit there, and I'll just python manage.py shell, and the first thing first, I'll just import that, and now I can actually say like the department accounts.employees.all, and which will give you that sort of employees there. So this is another way of doing it. By using the department model, we accessed the employee model. So there are other things that you can do, for example, I want to for example, I can access something like department.objects.all, and in here I can access the employee model, right? So if I sort of filter that, so the example is something like if I want to fetch the departments wherein the employee name starts with John, for example. So if there is an employee that starts with John, then that particular department I want to fetch. So in that case, what I will do is department.objects.all.filter. Then I will say, in order to access that name property in the employee model, I can simply say like the related name. So we have set the related name, right? So we should refer in that manner. So employees, then you can use __, which will give you access to all the fields here. So I can now access name or age or something. So we'll do name. So the name starts with John, right? So again, we have something like __ starts with. Now this is the default one. The default query starts with, or there is something like in or something you can find in the Django documentation. So equal to John. So the name starts with John, then we want to fetch that department. So if I click enter, you get HR. That's because in the HR department we have John Doe, so that's why we got that. Now what if I create a new one? So for example, I'll just create a new employee. For example, I'll say John Simpson, for example, and the department is again account. So in the accounts department there is something called John Simpson, an employee. I'll create that name. Accounts is not defined. Yeah, that was the accounts in the previous shall be defined, so I'll just manually fetch that here. So objects.get, and the name is equal to accounts. So that will do the trick. Now we have an employee John Simpson in the accounts. Now if you try to do the same thing, so I'm fetching the department where the employee name starts with John. I get two departments, right? So accounts and HR, which means John Simpson and the John Doe. So that's why we got two departments. So this is one way of doing it. Now there's also the reverse way, which means we can access employee from we can access department from employee. Now I'll get rid of this one, this related name here, so that you can get how it works. You know, if there is no related name there, you can't use employees there. So I'll restart the shell there. So I'll just exit and shell, and the first thing I'll import that. And if I now say like the employee's name, then that's not defined, cannot resolve. Now if there is no related name, then you can of course use just the model name itself. So employee, all in lowercase. So that will work fine. Now the next thing I'm showing is accessing department from employee. So I can say something like employee dot objects dot let me say filter. So I'll say filter. Then I want to access that department name, right? So for instance, I'll say department. Now department holds the department instance there. So I can actually do the double underscore there. So department double underscore name is equal to, for instance, I'm fetching the employees of the accounts department, so I can just say accounts here. So the important thing is here the underscore name. You can access the properties or the fields in the department table by using that underscore thing. So if I just enter that, I got that two things. So that's how we make the relationship between the two models and kind of accessing it using this or method. So I hope you understood the things. Now this may be a little bit trickier for beginners, so try to watch the video a couple of times, then you'll get a very good grasp on the things. And you can of course refer the documentation. I'll put the link in the description section, where you have a kind of relationship, the kind of another relationship, that is the article and reporter, where you have the relationship like an article should be associated with just one reporter, or in the reverse manner, a reporter can have or can write multiple articles. So you can of course explore whatever I said in the shell, whatever I written in the shell, all of the things is here, so you can of course refer this one as well. So that's it guys. I hope you enjoyed the concept of one-to-many relationship and many-to-one relationship with Django. So if you have any doubts or any suggestions, please do let me know in the comment section. And if you like the video, please hit the thumbs up button. And that's it guys. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed my channel, please do subscribe my channel and click the bell icon near to it. We'll see you in the very next one.